My name is Serena DeLuca, though everyone now calls me Rena. I'm 52, and if there's one truth I've learned, it's that life rarely follows the map we draw for it. I left Italy for love, or what I thought was love, and found myself in a world far from the one I had dreamed of. I met Graham Callahan in Rome. He was the kind of man girls in Naples only read about in glossy magazines. Tall, charming, with a voice that curled around your name like velvet. When he asked me to marry him, I was certain I'd found my forever. I left everything behind. My home, my family, my culture. I followed him across the ocean to America, where he managed an advertising empire with branches in London, Tokyo, New York. I was young and blind, lost in his whirlwind. 2 years into our marriage, our son Elliot was born. And in him I poured everything. He became my anchor, my purpose, especially as Graham's absences stretched longer, and the spark in his words dimmed into indifference. I discovered the affairs gradually. Lipstick on collars, perfume that wasn't mine, hotel charges that had nothing to do with work. But what was I to do? I had no friends, no family here. I stayed for Elliot. I built a smile I wore like armor. Elliot was perceptive even as a little boy. When he was 5, he brought me tissues in the kitchen when I cried. "It's the onions," I told him. But he knew better. As he grew, I began reclaiming myself. I enrolled in art classes at the local center, timidly painting the memories I had buried. What started as therapy became a passion, and eventually a modest business, importing Italian antiques, curating local galleries. Slowly, I started to remember who Serena had been before she became someone else's shadow. Graham's infidelity never ended. It simply evolved. But by then I had changed. I was no longer the scared girl who came across the sea. I was a woman with her own voice, her own vision. And Elliot, he saw it. When he was 15, he finally asked, "Mom, is Dad seeing someone else?" I hesitated. Then I said it. "Yes, he has been. 4 years. He didn't yell. He didn't storm off. He wrapped me in his arms and whispered, 'You deserve better, Mom.' That moment changed everything. Elliot became my strength, my confidant. When Graham was gone, Elliot filled the house with laughter and warmth. He helped fix things, carried the groceries, stayed up late while I prepped for an exhibit. Now he's 22. Tall, grounded, with a quiet strength that never wavers. Just last week, when a customer at my shop made a rude remark, Elliot came over to replace the broken back lock. "You shouldn't have to deal with that, Rena," he said, eyes dark with concern. I noticed then how his tone had changed. More protective, more sure. He called me Rena like he had when he was small and playing grown-up. But now it sounded different. Deeper. Real. Sometimes I wonder, what if I had stayed in Naples? What if I had left Graham when the first betrayal came? But then I see Elliot. I see who he's become. And I know that whatever regrets I carry, he is not one of them. He is my joy, my son, my anchor. For most of my life I was Serena Callahan, the loyal wife, the devoted mother, always the supporting character in someone else's story. But that began to change the day Elliot looked at me and saw someone more than just his mother. We were in the studio, surrounded by canvases and the faint scent of linseed oil, when he said it. "Rena," he began, his voice tender. He'd started calling me that again, saying it suited me better than the prim mom. "Your work deserves more than the corner of a shop. It deserves a spotlight." I smiled, brushing a curl behind my ear. "People see it. They come in every week." "That's not what I mean," he insisted, moving closer. "You're good. I've shown your work to my friend Daniel. His dad owns that gallery near the square. He wants to meet you." I laughed, unsure if I should be flattered or afraid. "You didn't tell him I'd agree to that." "I told him you were extraordinary." He paused, eyes gleaming. "And that you'd change his mind about what passion looks like." It stunned me, his certainty. He had always believed in me. But now there was something else in his voice. An urgency, a devotion that felt like more than familial pride. The night of the exhibition, I was a wreck. Elliot never left my side. He wore a tailored black shirt, sleeves rolled at the elbows. His eyes constantly scanning the room as if protecting me from the weight of expectation. When the lights dimmed and the applause came, he leaned in and whispered, "I told you they'd love you." I looked up, eyes wet. "You did this." "We did," he corrected, brushing his hand gently against my shoulder. "And we're just getting started." In the months that followed, we became a team. He handled the logistics, I poured my soul into canvas. We laughed more, spoke in glances. We had dinners together, worked late, rearranged displays side by side. But even as our gallery blossomed, one shadow remained: Graham. Though our marriage had long been empty, it was still intact on paper. One evening, as we sat in the soft hum of the studio lights, Elliot spoke what I had been avoiding. "Why are you still with him?" The question was quiet, but it held a storm behind it. I sighed. "Because it's complicated." "It doesn't have to be," he said, reaching for my hand. "You don't need him anymore. You never did." I stared at our hands. His strong, calloused fingers wrapped around mine. "You think I should leave him?" "I think you already have," he said. "Now you just need to make it real." That night I filed for divorce. Graham didn't take it well. He accused me of ingratitude, of timing, of betrayal. But Elliot stood by me, shielded me from the fallout, reminded me, every day, that I was more than the sum of my mistakes. "You're free now, Rena," he whispered the night the papers were signed. "Free to be whoever you want." I looked at him. His eyes full of pride and something softer, harder to name. And for the first time in years I felt weightless. The exhibition had marked the beginning of a new life. I was no longer the woman tethered to a loveless marriage or hiding behind polite smiles. I was Serena again, Rena, an artist, a woman with vision, and with Elliot by my side, someone finally seen. On the night we closed the show, the gallery was quiet, the wine glasses empty, and the paintings still glowing under soft lights. I wandered between them slowly, letting the silence settle into my bones. Elliot leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he watched me. "You did it," he said. I turned, my heart full. "We did it." He laughed softly. "I only opened the doors. You filled the room with something real." I walked toward him, my heels clicking softly against the wooden floor. "You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Without thinking, I reached up and kissed his cheek. Just a small, grateful gesture, but the moment lingered too long. When I pulled back, our eyes met. His expression had shifted. Softened, yes, but also deepened. There was a quiet tension between us, like a thread pulled taut. I looked away, heart racing. "Sorry," I murmured, uncertain why the air felt suddenly charged. "Don't be," he said, voice low. "You never have to apologize to me, Rena." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the way he had looked at me, the gravity in his voice, the way my heart had responded before my mind caught up. Over the following weeks, we spent more time together, more than usual. Without Graham in the picture, there was no pretense, no reason to hide the closeness we had always shared. We fell into routines. Morning espressos, gallery meetings, movie nights, easy laughter in the kitchen, and soft music echoing through the rooms as we rearranged furniture and discussed color palettes. One night, over leftover pizza, he turned to me and said, "Confession time." I raised an eyebrow. "You first." When I was 13, I had a crush on my math teacher. Gasped theatrically, "Elliot." He laughed, boyish and unburdened. "What?" She was smart, kind, and she wore glasses. I was doomed. We laughed until our sides hurt. I confessed to sneaking into a Naples nightclub at 16. We swapped secrets like old friends, like something more. The nights grew warmer, softer, full of moments I didn't want to end. There were touches that lasted just a second longer than they should have. Hand brushing my arm, a knee resting a little too close, a strand of hair tucked behind my ear. One night, as we stood washing dishes side by side, Elliot reached out and gently smoothed a loose curl from my forehead. "You're amazing, Rena," he said. "You always have been." I swallowed, the heat of his hand still ghosting across my skin. "Elliot, you've survived so much," he said. "You deserve more than what you've been given." I turned to him, heart trembling. I wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. Instead, I stepped closer and hugged him. He wrapped me in his arms, steady and warm. I lingered there, resting my cheek against his chest, listening to the beat of a heart I had known since the day he was born, and yet somehow now seemed brand new. When I pulled back, he cupped my cheek with a tenderness that made my breath hitch. "For being you," I whispered. "For seeing me." "Always," he said. The line between us blurred with every shared glance, every quiet moment. I had once believed that love only came once, that whatever was built on broken vows could never be rebuilt. But in Elliot's presence, I felt whole, not just as a mother or an artist, but as a woman. And each day, that truth became harder to ignore. It was a late summer evening, the city soft with twilight, when everything changed. Elliot and I sat together in the living room, a record playing low in the background. We were close, closer than usual. I had just finished telling him about the villa my grandmother had lived in, nestled in the hills above Sorrento. His eyes lit up. "You talk about Italy like it's still home." "It always will be," I said. "Even after all these years." "Then let's go." I blinked. "What?" "Let's go to Italy. Just us. I want to see it through your eyes." The idea made my pulse quicken. "You're serious?" He nodded. 2 weeks. Rome, Naples, the coast. You said once you missed the sunsets there. I want to watch them with you. I couldn't say no. We flew out that fall. Rome welcomed us with golden skies and cobbled streets. We drank wine on terraces, wandered through ancient ruins, kissed the air with every greeting. But it wasn't until we reached the Amalfi Coast that I truly felt at home again. In a villa wrapped in ivy, we stayed like locals. Bought bread from the old man at the corner, drank espresso from chipped porcelain cups, fell asleep to the sound of the sea. One evening, as the sun sank over the hills, Elliot turned to me and said, "You were meant to be here." Smiled. "So were you." We stood together in the olive grove behind the villa. He took my hand. "This feels right, doesn't it?" he asked. He nodded. "It does." And just like that, the impossible became inevitable. We didn't go back. Within a year, we had sold the gallery and purchased a home just outside Florence. It had sun-warmed terracotta tiles, lavender in the air, and a view of the valley that never got old. We built a new life: art, markets, shared dinners under string lights. Elliot handled the business, translated contracts, made locals laugh with his rough Italian. Painted. Breathe. He would twirl me around the kitchen, brush my cheek with his hand, whisper things that only made sense between us. And in those moments, I was no longer bound by past roles. I was not a former wife, not just a mother. I was Serena, and I was loved. It's been 5 years. The lavender still blooms outside our villa in early June, and every morning, the light spills through our windows like a benediction. I wake slowly now. No rush, no fear. Just warmth, and the steady sound of Elliot breathing beside me. There's a rhythm to our life here in Tuscany. Mornings begin with espresso and silence. Comfortable, unhurried. I paint when I feel moved to, not because I must. Sometimes we don't leave the house for days. Other times we drive out to some forgotten village, sip wine under a canopy of stars, and fall asleep in each other's arms, lulled by the sound of the countryside. I am still me, Serena De Luca, daughter of Naples, painter of memory. But I am no longer hollowed by regret or shadowed by someone else's vision of who I should be. I've been called many things in my life. Muse, wife, mother, dreamer. But here, in this small corner of the world with Elliot, I am only this, whole. The world outside may never understand our love, nor the quiet revolution it was to choose each other, not out of obligation or tradition, but out of truth. But we do not need their understanding. In this place of olive groves and evening light, we have carved out a life shaped not by names or titles, but by the fierce, honest devotion that carried us from pain to peace. There are moments when I catch Elliot watching me while I paint. His eyes soft, a book resting forgotten on his lap. And in those moments I feel the fullness of this love, the impossible kind that blooms in silence, survives the storm and settles into stillness. This is not the ending. This is the life we were brave enough to begin. Together. Always.